Welcome back to my box fan build. Thanks for tuning in. This week has gotten away from me. I have been busy. And it blizzarded. I have been working on the van all week since you saw me last, but I have not been working on my power system. But let me get you guys up to date on everything I've accomplished since the last time I saw you, and then we'll talk about what I'm doing next. So I went home and slept off all the paint fumes, and when I woke up, my weird Bob Rogers split personality was gone, so I got to work right away on my shoebox. I started framing it out with the same 1x ripped in half to 1 5/8, just like the cabinets. I glued and screwed it to the plywood in the back. Put some vertical pieces on, just to the top of the plywood in the back. And then to figure out the width on the bottom, I just kind of used my shoe there. I also used the wall to the left of the opening for the entry door too, to gauge at least how wide I could make it. It ended up being about 8.5 inches overall on width or depth. Used a square because I can't level the van front to back. I was going to make the bottom the same construction as the cabinets, but I decided with how narrow and skinny that thing is, a piece of plywood would be strong enough. And then for this piece here, I just measured over from the cabinet to the right to figure out how to make it square, because I know that cabinet is as well. And then I cut this next piece to the same height, and I even glued it on and everything. But then I realized I need to go up to the ceiling with it, otherwise it would look weird. I need a nice partition between the shower and the cabinet. So I ripped that all back off, cut a new piece to the height of the ceiling. And then I braced it at that level, exactly how I did the sides of the cabinets. Now I'm doing some CAD, some cardboard aided design, to figure out the plywood on the left. And it was a pretty funky shape, because it had the curve for the front of the box, but it also had like 2 notches in it. One for the ceiling panel itself, and then another one for the like sort of trim piece on the ceiling. I grabbed a piece of 3/8 plywood, traced it out on there, and I decided since it's such a small piece, I could go ahead and just use the table saw to get a straighter cut with it. And then for the curvy part, of course, I used the jigsaw. And I had to cut and fit, like 3 times to get it right. But I got it pretty dang perfect. So I glued and nailed that on, and then I started working on the front, which originally I was going to frame that out and use something real thin, but I was pretty much out of 3/8 plywood at that point. Here I am using the very last of it for the bottom, which ended up being like 3 pieces. But for the front, I found a piece of 1/2 inch that had a really nice looking grain to it. Used my shoe again to measure how high I wanted to make that. I just wanted to make sure I could pull my shoes up and out of the box. I'll put more than just shoes in there, but sanding it down because it's gonna get stained. 1/2-inch plywood is 4 ply and 3/8 is 3 ply. So each ply, each layer of wood is, 1/8 of an inch. Everybody knows this, but sometimes you see really weird measurements in the store, like, 19/32 or something. I don't know what that's all about, but now I'm adding more plywood over the top to fill in the sides, make it all look even, have the same grain and all that. This piece here, the plywood on the left kind of stuck out a little further. So to get it to lay perfectly straight and line up with the piece below, I put a little filler strip on the right. Tack that on, and then I cut a tiny little piece for the other side, and I just used a piece of the 1x to set the fence on the table saw, because it's exactly that width. Now the basic construction is done. Now I'm just kind of like trying to figure out what to do next. I gotta get some trim on this thing, so started cutting some corner trim. And I am going all the way around with this one. So I got to miter the corners, used my Leatherman to notch it around that roof ceiling support. And I didn't tack it on yet, the piece on the left, until I got the bottom piece cut. That way I could get the corner just perfectly lined up. And then I tacked it on. And then I ran out of nails in my brad nailer and didn't notice. And I noticed that my trim was still loose, so I had to fill it back up and kind of go back and tack it back on. And there we go. There's the finished product. Look at that trim. Shoe box. Speaking of shoes, that guy in the comments said my carpentry skills are mediocre at best. Well, how about some Art Deco 3D wall triangles for you? Yeah? I had a seam that I purposefully centered on the wall panel so it wouldn't look weird or out of place, and I had to cover it with something, so I decided to get a little creative with it there. Now it's the next day. I'm sanding everything down, gonna get some stain on it. I put an extra little piece of corner trim on the left there. I wasn't sure if I was gonna put plastic wall on that too or not, because I am putting it on that back piece over the shower. And the opening for the cab looks way better now that I've sanded it like this. It's all nice and smooth. And I still need to trim that out too. I was trying to get around to that this week as well, but stuff happened. Got everything sanded. Now I'm putting some stain on it. I needed to get this done before doing my power system or anything else, because I need to clean my entire van like very thoroughly. There's like dust everywhere from doing all this carpentry and woodwork in here. I gotta get it all cleaned up real good, vacuumed and dusted and wiped down, and then I can do the power system. I actually sanded that little weird looking light spot in the top middle. It's hard to tell because it's so, time lapse. Everything's going so fast, but I sanded that just to get the stain to soak in, look a little more even. I did decide to stain and poly these pieces a 1/2-inch crown on either side of the door, but then I didn't do that to this piece I'm putting on now. I painted it the wall color. And I know that's really weird to some people and would drive someone nuts, but that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted, if you break it up too much, because it's such a tiny space, it'll look cluttered. So I wanted the walls to just be one solid looking color, and then the cabinets to be their own thing going on. And now I'm painting with the primer. Just getting everything. That handy panel actually soaks up primer pretty good. It's not as bad as drywall, but I got a pretty thick coat on, and then that makes it so I don't have to paint the wall color too much. I also buy like cheap primer too. It's like the second cheapest one you can get. It's good stuff, but it soaks in. Here I am, like, texting my ex or something. The paint fumes were starting to get to me at that point. I'm just kidding. I actually threw away a paintbrush that I was using because it just sat all crooked in my painting supplies box for so long that I couldn't get these bristles to straighten back out on it. It was driving me nuts. I just trashed it and grabbed I'm using the same brush I used for the green paint. I clean them out good, I just didn't store it properly is all. I don't buy expensive brushes. I mean, none of them are cheap to begin with, but I don't get like the $24 brush, you know, I get the like $8 or $9 one. And then I used the roller for the primer, just so I could get a good thick, good coat on it. And then because rolling is it puts the paint on a lot thicker than brushing, I just kind of went back and brushed over the edges again, giving them a second coat so everything's good, even consistency or appearance for just getting it all ready in one shot for the wall color. And there it is, all primed up, and I gotta let that sit overnight and then come back, polyurethane and paint. I like the wall triangles. Chrysler Building ain't got nothing on the Snake van. So now we're putting the poly on. This is blizzard day, so I had to go back to my job twice this evening because every time it rains, things leak. And yeah, I got off work, came here to work on the van, and had to fight traffic across town twice just to deal with leaking stuff. And then I managed to get it done though. And right now I only have one coat of poly on this. I'm gonna put 3 like I did everywhere else on all the other cabinets. Now we're doing the wall paint. Creepy Bob Rogers split personalities come back. Painting a happy little wall there. This green paint looks way different on camera, by the way, guys. It's more of a brown, like earthy green in real life. It looks more like, I don't know. I painted my mom's basement green as well, and every picture I ever took of it just looks way different than it does in person. It just depends on your camera. Of course, I'm just filming this with a GoPro, but I don't know. Maybe some of you guys can, meet me in real life and see the van for what it really is. Over here, I kept painting and then forgot that I was gonna stop right there with the green. And I know that looks really weird, but I'm actually putting that plastic wall back there because that's where the shower's gonna go. And I know it's like opened up to the cab, and I could have left the wall there, but I wanted to be able to recline the seat back, and I'm putting a shower curtain there. So it'll all make sense when I get the curtain on, but anyway, now it's time to do some carpet. I got these carpet squares that I'm gonna line that with. There they are. It's a felt backed carpet, so they're not as heavy as the rubber backed kind. And at first I didn't like the color of them, but after I installed it in here, it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. And to adhere them to the wall, I'm using carpet tape, which works really good for stuff like this. These little carpet squares. If you're just lining a cabinet with thin carpet like that, it's a good solution. And it should stay sticky. You know, if it ever falls off, I can always just glue it on someday. But I think it'll be fine because how about a little fizzy water for you? I'm using the piece of cardboard again. I dug it out of the trash so I could cut a little piece for the top left above that support that I put in there. And then I'm really happy with the way these back pieces turned out because I had them curve up the wall, and the way they tucked in behind the ceiling panel was just like perfect. And then I trimmed the side so it could go over into that corner a little bit. And then I took my knife wherever there was a bolt, because there's those 3 bolts, and I just cut an X so the bolt could poke through the carpet. And then I put the carpet tape on it. The worst part about peel and stick is the peeling part. And that carpet tape really sticks. You gotta be careful when you're going to stick it on there. Gotta get it kind of come into it gently, you know. And I made this 49 inches wide on the inside somehow. I don't know why, but these carpet squares are 24. So I had to put a little tiny extra, like 1-inch piece on the left side there. But I had to go over a little more above the support anyway, so. But the stuff's really easy to work with. It's easy to cut. See, little tiny extra piece I had to add on there. And there we go. I put Sharpie on the end of the bolts too, just so they wouldn't, because they had a seam sealer on them. And this little bit in the top corner there, I'm putting a piece of crown mold right there, which I've already bought. I just haven't gotten around to installing that stuff yet, but that's what'll cover those like wire ducts that are going up there. And look at that mess from the carpet tape. I went ahead and did all the cabinets too, just lined the bottoms of them. That was the plan all along. Turned out pretty good. A 24-inch piece fit perfectly between them 2 shelf supports I put in there too. And I don't quite have enough to do the whole inside of the cabinets, you know, the backs and stuff. This wheel well over here I'm carpeting because it's going to be seen. And that's also where my batteries are going to go. And for these, you always want to do the sides before you do the top. You get a better look that way. That's how I did the foam. Using up all my little pieces so I can save on the big ones. I'm using an older roll of carpet tape now. I ran out of the other stuff. It's a little wrinkly, but it still works. The stuff's all gonna be, I'm gonna have a little like battery powered vacuum for the van because, you know, dust and stuff. This will give a nice soft place for my batteries to go between the foam and this carpet. It'll have a nice cushy ride, you know. Shouldn't like be abrasive on the plastic and cause it to crack or anything. Just going all out with the carpet tape because I have plenty of it. It's good stuff. Better than glue because, you know, if I ever did have to remove it, it'd be a clean removal. And there we go. We got the wheel tub on this side carpeted. All right, now let's talk about this power system. So 800 watts of solar on the roof. You already seen that. It's 4 200-watt panels. I'm gonna play around with the wiring on them. Just try different things. First, I'm gonna do 2 by 2. It's like 2 in series, 2 in parallel. And then this Oh my God, it's heavy. Lift with your back. This is my 3000 watt inverter charger, pure sine wave. It's a Li-Time is the brand. Some people call it a switching inverter. I want an inverter charger. That way I can just hook up to shore power and charge my batteries instead of having to buy, you know, a separate battery charger like one of them Noco Geniuses or whatever, you know. I hope this never breaks because it was like 400 bucks. So there's my inverter. And this goes right here, just like that. Here's my batteries. They're eco-worthy. They're 280 amp hour each, lithium iron phosphate, and they're 12 volt. And you can get batteries that have like a low temp cutoff, because if you charge lithium batteries below freezing, you damage them. And you can also get batteries that have like a built-in heater. These have none of that. I got a brand that had really good reviews. I watched some videos. There's a dude on YouTube that cuts these things open and shows you what the inside looks like. These have a really good internal BMS, you know, other than the not having a low temp cutoff and all that. So I got to be careful not to charge them when it's below freezing. So right now in Nebraska in early March, you know, it's getting down to the 20s at night still. So I got to be careful with that. I do have a battery cutoff switch, and I can shut the charge controller off too. These are huge, but they actually weigh a lot less than that inverter. And these are going to go right here, just like that. And I'll find a clever way to strap them down. And I put the terminals together for easy wiring. It'll come up to the wall, shut off switch, run over to the bus bars. So it's going to be pretty busy under this desk. There's a lot going on. This is my DC to DC charger. I got a 40 amp. Any more than that, I don't know if I can get a big enough alternator, honestly. This is gonna go over here on the wall. And I'm running 2-gauge wire from here all the way up to the engine. And I'll show you how I'm doing that. I kind of got it figured out. There's my battery cutoff switch. It's that Blue Sea Systems brand. They have pretty good stuff. They're on Amazon. Most of their stuff's like intended for boats, but this is one that switches both the positive and the negative. So the battery switch is going to go on the wall right here, right above the batteries, right over the terminals. And this switch is the positive and the negative. From the negative coming off of this, I'm going to have this. It's called the shunt. It's part of my battery monitor. Coming off of that are these. These are my, what do you call them? Terminal blocks, power distribution blocks. I got 2 of these, you know, positive and negative. They have 3/8 studs, and they have little screws for smaller wires to come off of. Running off of these, I'm going to have my solar coming in, my inverter, going out, wires going up to my fuse panel. This is my fuse panel. It's just a little, you know, figure out how to open it. So your negatives up here, your positives down here. And then this is where all the little circuits for everything, like the lights, you know, everything, DC, is going to come off of this. So battery switch, shunt, bus bars, fuse panel. And then I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to get an AC 120 volt breaker box. They have little ones for RVs, just like a little 4-circuit deal. And I will get that before the next video, so I can start, you know, wiring all that up too. Going to my inverter. I've got a 300 amp breaker. You know. Oh, my inverter charges 5 to 45 amp charging current, by the way. So the inverter charges at 45 amps, the DC to DC charger charges at 40 amps. And then my solar, we'll go up top now. Here's my solar charge controller. It's a 60 amp Lee time. All of the main components I bought are Lee time. And I guess it does have a fan on it. I couldn't remember. This is gonna go pretty much right here, top left. Mainly because I've got this much wire to work with coming off of the roof. And I've got 10 gauge wire coming in, but it says that it can do a max of 6 gauge wire on these lugs on it. So I did buy some 6 gauge wire that I plan on running from that down to, you know, the terminals down there. For the solar panels going into the charge controller, I got a 90 amp breaker. Yeah, that way I can shut the panels off if I gotta work on the controller for whatever reason. This is my battery monitor. It's just a little guy, and it works with that shunt that I showed you before. This will tell me how much battery life I got, the rate of charge, the voltage, the current draw, all of that stuff. And then this is the controller for my inverter. It's got a pretty nice, you know, controller. And that's all gonna go below the charge controller, mounted to that plexiglass on this left side. And the DC to DC charger has a controller too, but I can't find it at the moment. It's around here somewhere. Van's kind of a mess. Underneath, above my batteries and inverter, I showed you guys this before, but this is a fire suppression device for like EVs. It's just a little automatic popping fire extinguisher thing. I may or may not install this. It's kind of scary, but I bought this to put under here. Just, you know, inverter and batteries, you know. So there's all that, and then there's all my switches. So I'm gonna have, here is a 5 rocker switch panel, and then I have another one with another 5, but it has USB charger built in and a little power outlet. You can get these all over Amazon. I actually got one for my Buick that I'm about to be installing soon. But I ended up going with red switches that light up red because that color won't keep me up at night. And there's things that I'll have turned on at night. So, like, I'll probably switch the power for pretty much everything I can. I'm going to use up all of these switches. And then for the ceiling lights, I bought a little dimmer switch. It also lights up red, but it's like a little button that you press, and then I think you hold it down to dim. Came with the, or it's the same brand as the ceiling lights. So, gonna have all that going on. You know, it's gonna be pretty sweet. And then with these switches, you don't want to run a ton of amperage through a little tiny switch. You know, they can only handle so much. So for like all the lights, the interior lights, and the max fan and stuff, no big deal. But for things that draw more amps, like I'm gonna have a 12-volt air compressor in the back. I haven't bought it yet, but I am gonna have one. I've picked one out already. It's a 5-gallon. It's made for like air suspension, you know, for custom cars, but I'm gonna use it for other things. And then I am gonna switch the diesel heater, even though it has its own controller. But I'd like to be able to just shut the power off to that, you know, separately. And then if I wire exterior lights like floodlights or off-road lights, those generally take, you know, a lot of power. So what you do is you wire the switch over to a relay. I got a 5-pack of these relays. They're 40 amp. And a relay is basically a switch that you switch with the switch. And it can handle more amperage. So these are 40 amp. They got 12 gauge tinned copper wire, you know. And I have a 5-pack of these, and they're gonna go underneath with all the rest of that stuff, with the fuse panel and, you know, all the breakers and stuff too. So, and then this is the little controller for the diesel heater. It's just a kind of a cheesy little thing, but that'll go somewhere up here. And then this is the little remote for it that's gonna go next to the bed with all the other little remotes. The remote for the max fan, the lights, all that. So now for wiring all of this, I've got a 620 piece heat shrink wire connector pack. I've got a battery terminal pack with heat shrink. And here's the 6-gauge wire for the solar controller. Comes with terminals and heat shrink. Here is my battery cable. I went as crazy as I could with this stuff. This is like 0-gauge actual welding cable, so it's real copper. And I think I got about 10 feet here. This is going to be for the battery terminals and for the inverter. Heavy duty. Then I've got 12-gauge, which I'm running up to the fridge and to the diesel heater. Because I was told you need to have a pretty good power supply to those. And that will be on a relay. I'm also going to put a relay on my water pump, I think. And I got some 16-gauge like I've been using for the lights. I got a whole bunch of 14-gauge. This is coming off the max fan. I just haven't trimmed it yet. These are for the inverter. It's just covers for the terminals on those. And then for making my battery cables, I bought this from Amazon. It was pretty affordable. You know, there's name brand ones, but this is just the, you know, cheap version. But this is a crimper, a battery terminal crimper. And it came with a nice cutter. And I already have lots of wire strippers and cutters for the smaller stuff. And I'll make a couple practice pieces before I, you know, actually make my battery cables. But I bought more split loom. And then to make everything neat and pretty, I got various things. I got some coax staples, which I think might work for this. We'll see. And then I got a bunch of the 1/2-inch cable clamps like I've been using everywhere. Then I got some of these bigger, like heavy duty, like rubber coated metal ones for, you know, the big stuff down below. And then I have like an 800 pack of zip ties. I have lots of heat shrink. I got the good electrical tape. I have almost everything I need to do this, except that plexiglass. And I've been shopping around and oh my God, it's like expensive. So I gotta shop around some more before I buy that, but I'm getting that soon, like today. So once I got the power system up and running and make sure everything works like it should, I'm moving in. I'm also going to put outlets under here, under the desk, an outlet back here in the like garage area, and one on the outside of the van, you know, under the awning out there in the, you know, the patio, we'll call it. I got my mattress. It came yesterday, and my RV like ventilation mat that's supposed to go under the mattress for condensation and stuff. If that is insufficient, like I'll try it out, and if I'm getting like moisture under the bed, then I will drill holes back here on the bed platform. So gonna try that first, and then probably end up punching a bunch of holes in this bed, but we'll see. I tried to do the best I could with this video. I've had a very hectic week, and you know, I'd have a lot more to show you guys if I didn't have a full-time job, but I'm getting there, and I'm really excited for how the van's turning out. I think it's really starting to feel like home in here. I really appreciate you guys watching. A special thanks to Jeff, Christy, Paul, and Killer Panda for joining my Patreon. I appreciate that. I will be installing my power system in the next video. I'm actually starting on it like today. So we had a blizzard this week. I was pretty excited at the beginning of the week that the weather was going to be decent and in the 50s, and then that changed. But it's back to good now. It was a brief little winter's last stand, we'll call it. But yeah, spring is coming, and I'll be living in this van in no time. So thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate you. I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you in the next one.